Chapter 15. Axel. I followed Chastity into the ensuite, loving the way her generous butt swayed as she moved. She was all curves, and she was absolutely gorgeous. I flicked on the water and adjusted it so that it was soon steaming hot, and she moved beneath the spray. She was naturally, gloriously beautiful. Bright eyes, amazing smile, perfect skin. And her body was so inviting, I couldn't wait to touch her again. I watched her quickly rinse off. Then when she turned around to smile at me, I moved in. My hands ached to touch her, and they weren't going to be denied. If she wanted to wait, then I'd wait. But that was where following her lead ended. I cupped her face and kissed her, stepping into the shower and feeling the hot water washing over my face and body. She grabbed my waist and held me close, kissing me back with all the passion and need I'd hoped for. My hands roamed her body, loving the smoothness of her back and the indentation of her tiny waist. She moaned, arching back to give me better access. I pulled away slightly, nibbling on her earlobe and whispering to her, "It's tomorrow, you know. It's not your turn anymore." "You okay?" I asked, chuckling at the way she staggered and stumbled like a drunkard. She giggled as she dried herself, then flung the towel over the chair next to the bed. "I feel amazing. Drunk, but better." She pulled back the covers and climbed into the bed, crawling to the middle of the mattress and laying on the pillow as close to my side as possible. She reached out her arm and patted my side. "Come, please." I crawled into bed and lay down, facing her. "Sweet dreams, sweetheart." She reached out under the blankets and lay her hand on my arm. "Thank you for tonight. It was amazing." I grinned at her. "It certainly was." She nodded and closed her eyes, her little hand curled around my bicep. I watched her fall asleep, and everything in me was content. Happy. More than I'd been in so long. I couldn't even remember the last time I'd felt anything like it. Even with the women and the money. I closed my eyes and let myself relax into the pillow. I'd had a shit day at work, and a brilliant session with her, but I was never going to be able to fall asleep. As soon as I closed my eyes, my subconscious would percolate up everything I worried about, and the downward spiral would begin. I began to pull away, determined to sleep in the room I reserved for these nights. "Don't go," she whispered. "Cuddle with me." She rolled over, pushing her ass back into the cradle of my hips and nestling into me like a cat. "I'll stay for a while," I said, sliding my arm over her waist and holding her close to me. I could think about work while I lay here. I didn't really need to go anywhere. "Sweet dreams, Chastity." She sighed happily, and I closed my eyes again. She was warm and soft, inviting in a way that women who were too skinny just weren't. I was beginning to think that my taste in women was changing. The software company merger. I tried thinking about the deal I had on the table, but my brain wouldn't grab on to any of the facts, and I slipped into sleep. Chapter 16. Axel. Waking up with her in my arms again was startling. She was so hot and soft, draped all over me. I felt instantly overwhelmed and suffocated, though my stomach lurched at the idea of kicking her out so that I could get ready for work. I moved away from her and took a breath. This was too strange, too different. How was this even possible? "Good morning," she said to me, rolling onto her back and stretching her arms above her head. Then she rolled out of bed and reached for her clothes. She was breathtaking to watch. "When are we catching up again?" I called out as she pulled on a simple sundress and started tying up her shoes. Damn, this girl did not mess around. I'd struggled to get ready so quickly. She pulled out a hair elastic from her bag and swept her long blonde hair up into a ponytail. "I don't know. What sort of schedule do you have this week?" "Terrible," I groaned. "Meetings every day. But I'm sure I can squeeze in another late date one night. Maybe. I had plans to wine and dine some international visitors, and some of my meetings would go into the early hours of morning." "How about I pop by for lunch sometime this week?" she suggested, grabbing up her bag. "Sure, but when are you going to stay over again?" I asked. Chastity grinned. I'm spending a few days with my mom and have plans with friends, since I only have a few weeks off. But how's the weekend for you? I frowned. I have a party Friday night, but we could catch up after? She bit her lip. I have plans Friday night too. Not sure how late it'll be. Are you free Saturday night? I didn't really like the idea of waiting 5 days to see her again, but this week would fly with all the work I had to do. I can clear the weekend for you, I said with a grin. Once I got her into my bed, I wasn't letting her out again for at least 2 days. She walked over to where I lay on the bed and leaned over to kiss me sweetly, then pulled back with a smile. I better get going. Thank you again for a great night. Have a great week with your friends, I managed to say, though the words sounded like sawdust in my mouth. Fuck it. I was jealous of anyone who got to spend time with her. What was wrong with me? I raised a hand and waved at her as she walked to the door. I was starting to think she was opposed to breakfast the way she kept running off. See you on Saturday. She grinned at me as she headed out the door. Bye. And with that, I flopped back on the mattress and covered my face with my hands. I had it bad. And unlike most of the women I dated, whose appeal lessened with every date, my attraction to Chastity was only growing. I sighed and hauled myself out of bed and headed for the shower. Why did I get the feeling that no matter how much time I spent with Chastity, I was never going to get sick of her smile? Chapter 17. Chastity. The plans I'd made with my mom suddenly seemed lackluster compared to what I would have been doing with Axel. What are you thinking about? My mother asked me, looking over her expensive cappuccino. You look a million miles away. I picked up the little silver teapot in front of me and poured myself peppermint tea. I don't know. It's Axel, isn't it? Mom asked, sighing heavily. I rolled my eyes, immediately annoyed at her. Why do you have to say it like that? Honey, you're about to finish college and head off to chiropractor school. The last thing you need is to start some relationship that's never going to last. I took a sip of my tea, though my stomach dropped with a lurch. Why did she have to be like that? Why won't it last? I asked, though I didn't want to know what she thought. Mom had dated a few guys since she and Dad had divorced, but never been serious with any of them. Things just always didn't work out, and I often wondered if it was them, or if she had some issues that she simply couldn't get past. Mom sighed again. Sweetheart, he's twice your age. And? I said, annoyed that his age was the first and only argument Mom had with me. I love how old he is, how smart and successful and fit he is. Guys my age are skinny, lazy, and horny, and just... I shuddered. Gross. They also weren't into serious relationships. They all wanted to screw around for a few years before they settled down. So a virgin like me was a red flag for all of them. Then find someone 5 or even 10 years older, Mom said with a sigh. Not 20. People will think you've got daddy issues. Mom! I groaned and pushed my half-eaten chocolate croissant away. She'd just ruined my appetite. It's true, Chastity. Well, people can think what they like. I do not have daddy issues because I've always had my dad. He never abandoned me, never moved away, never stopped loving me. I huffed at her. No matter how many times she liked to complain about my dad, I wasn't disappointed in him. He never got remarried, never had any kids. Neither did I, Mom defended. I glared at her. And I don't have any mommy issues either, so stop trying to put your shit on me. My mother's eyebrows flicked up. What's wrong with you tonight? Nothing, I said, annoyed now, even though I was the one who had ramped up the fight. I like him, Mom, a lot, and I don't want you shading me or him when I've never even dated someone before. You just can't do it. I was so agitated, my arms were shaking, so I stuffed my hands into my lap and squeezed my hands into fists. Okay, Chastity, don't blow a gasket. Jeez. I stood up abruptly, afraid I'd start yelling if I stayed with her a moment longer. I'm just going to the bathroom. Won't be long. I snatched up my cell phone, went to the ladies' room, and sat down in a stall. I didn't need to go, but I needed a moment to myself, a second to breathe. I got my phone out and decided to message Axel. After all, why not? Hey, how's your day been? I sent it off, then decided to cruise Facebook for a minute before going out to brave my mom again. God, she could be such a drag. If I wanted someone to give me hope or support or love, she wasn't the one I went to. And that was kind of sad. Hey yourself. Day was busy but good. How about you? I couldn't stop the immediate flush of happiness that permeated every cell in my being at his response. I giggled to myself, not caring if someone heard me and thought I was crazy. Good overall. Mom's being a pain in the ass. I bit my lip and waited for the response. You okay? Again, my heart took flight. Damn it, I was so into this guy. Yeah, no problem. Just tired, I think. I could almost hear his chuckle in my ear. He knew why I was tired. We had a late night and an early start. No regrets. LOL, never. I wished I had a photo of him just so I could look at it for a minute. Definitely something I'd have to do next time we were together. And speaking of which, I haven't got any plans for lunch tomorrow. Where will you be around 12? 1? Can we catch up? He didn't respond right away, so I got up, left the stall, and washed my hands. I'd organized to catch up with some friends tomorrow, but I could push them back to the afternoon. My heart wouldn't be happy until I saw him again. I could probably take half an hour off around 1 p.m. Though, can I confirm tomorrow? Meetings change last minute sometimes. I dried my hands and picked up my cell once more. Yeah, sounds great. Text me the address and I'll be there. He did, sending me the address of a building right in the heart of the city. If Mom wouldn't lend me her car, I'd just take an Uber. Wouldn't be too expensive, hopefully. I took a deep breath before heading out of the bathroom and walking back to the table. You're smiling again. That's good, Mom noted, still eating her grilled chicken salad. Yeah, everything's fine. Are you almost ready to go home, Mom? Oh? Her tone was filled with disappointment. I was hoping we could stay out for a bit. Go for a walk, catch a movie, something. I tried not to grimace visibly. I'm starting to get a real headache, Mom. Can I take you out for breakfast instead? My treat. Mom lit up at the idea of another meal out. I had money saved, and I had no issue spending everything on my mom. She and I might clash a bit, but in the end, I owed her for my life. Okay, sweetheart. Let's go home and put you to bed. Mom tucked me up and took me home, and I curled into my tiny single bed and dreamt of the king-size bed I'd slept in the night before. The next day, I took Mom out for brunch, had a long shower, braided my hair, and got dressed into some of my best clothes. Proper black pants, nice sweater. I was going into the city to meet Axel in his work environment. A denim miniskirt and flip-flops would not cut it, I was certain. I even tucked my long braids up into an elaborate design at the back of my head. I looked 30. Maybe. I put on mascara and a rose-pink lip gloss and was ready to go. You sure it's okay if I take your car? I asked my mother as I grabbed the keys and packed my bag. Of course, hun. You won't be long, right? Mom asked, walking out into the hallway. Wow, you look nice. Where did you say you were going again? I didn't. Meeting Axel for lunch, I said with a brilliant smile and turned away with a wave before she could say something cutting about my extremely hot pseudo-boyfriend. I didn't really know what to call him. Bye, Mom. I ran to her car, got in, and started it. It had been ages since I'd driven a car, since I didn't have one at school. I just didn't use it enough to justify the expense. I drove the half an hour into the city, hating the traffic and the inability to find parking. But at the same time, I couldn't be annoyed. I was so freaking excited to finally see him. Luckily, I found a lot with a few spots open a block from Axel's building. I had about 15 minutes to walk to his address, so I sent him a message. Just parked. We'll walk over and meet you where? Lobby? Outside? I was almost at his building when the message came back. I'm running a little late, so come up to the office and I'll order us in some food. I wasn't going to argue with that. I arrived at the address and my mouth fell open. It was a fucking skyscraper. Whoa. Please let him have some little dinky office on the 3rd floor. Because the idea of facing the reality that Axel really was as rich as he claimed was finally sinking in. He's a billionaire. A billionaire. Say it again. A billionaire, I whispered to myself as I stepped into the lobby and went straight up to the reception desk. Can I help you? The smartly dressed woman behind the sleek desk asked. Yes, I'm here to see Axel Patterson. He said to come up to his office. The woman smiled back. Yes, Mr. Patterson said he was expecting someone. Go right over to those elevators. 42nd floor. 42? I repeated, aghast. That was a little too high in the sky for me. Yes. She returned to answer the phone, and I headed over to the elevator and got in. Holy shit! I squeaked to myself as the doors closed and I rode all the way up to Axel's floor. When the elevator doors dinged open, I was greeted by another reception desk. Hello, I said to the woman behind this desk, who looked about 60, and seemed like the kind of professional who should be running her own business. Can I help you? She asked, staring down her nose at me. I'm here to meet Axel Patterson for lunch, I managed to say, standing tall and straight and trying not to fidget. The woman looked me up and down, and I wasn't sure she liked what she saw. Don't worry, I whispered to her, because I couldn't help but attempt to make her smile. My mom doesn't like the fact I'm dating him either. The old crone actually cracked a smile and walked around the desk. Let me show you to his desk personally. I didn't know why that sounded like a huge compliment, but I flashed the woman my brightest smile and was led down an imposing long hallway until finally I stood before 2 large, impressive doors. The receptionist, who was probably the office manager, knocked, and I heard Axel's annoyed voice call out, I'm rather busy. I giggled and covered my mouth with my hand. Your name, dear? Chastity. The woman's eyes lit up with amusement. Shall I send Chastity away, sir? There wasn't a verbal reply. Instead, the door opened abruptly. No, Cheryl. Thank you. The office manager winked at me and walked away. Axel turned to me with an awestruck look on his face. How did you get that dragon to like you? I laughed. By not treating her like a dragon, for one thing. I grinned at him, and despite my better judgment, jumped at him and wrapped my arms around his neck. Hey, you. Hey, yourself, he growled, and whisked me into his office, the door shutting loudly behind us. Chapter 18. Axel. I kicked the door shut, the sound reverberating through the empty room. I couldn't think of anything but her. It was bliss. When she finally pulled away, the euphoria eyes made me smile. Hey. Hey, she said as she cupped my face and smiled. Something strange winged through my heart at the look in her eyes. Was this what it felt like to be in love? To want someone in every part of your life, not just your bed. She'd already wrapped my dragon of an office manager around her little finger, and I could see myself meeting her for lunches and dinners, taking her home to meet my parents. Holy hell. Slow the fuck down. I grabbed her wrist and pulled her hand off my face, suddenly irked by all the thoughts pulsing through my brain. I ordered lunch. It should be here soon, I said, taking her hand and drawing her over to the leather couch against the wall. She didn't sit down, instead disentangling our fingers and walking over to the window behind my desk. Holy shit, she gasped. This view is insane. I shrugged. Yeah, I guess so. This has been my office for almost 10 years now. I'd slowly but surely taken up more and more of the office building, and the upper 20 floors were all my employees now. She spun around. And this office. Axel, you could play volleyball in here. I glanced across the expanse of my workspace and tried to see it how she did. To me, the large desk, visitors' chairs, bookcase, and couch were just props designed for ease of work and to impress people who walked in for a meeting. It seemed like she was impressed, which I suppose was the point. Not an activity I've considered, I told her seriously. Volleyball? I hadn't even looked at a net since college. And back then, I only played on the beach so that I could show off my upper body. That usually guaranteed me a woman or two in my bed that night. I hadn't had much back then. She came back to my side and sat down on the couch.
So, what's for lunch?
She was all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I tried to lift myself up to her level of excitement, but failed for some reason. Perhaps I was starting to worry if all my money and success were a major factor in her wanting to date me. "It'll be here in a moment." And as if my words had conjured the delivery, there was a loud knock at the door. "Come in," I called out, and a young woman walked in with a tray full of food from the restaurant downstairs.
"Hello, sir,"
she said with a polite bob of her head. "Just put it all on the table," I requested, reaching for Chastity's hand. But she jumped up and went over to the server, giving her a beautiful smile.
"What did you bring us?"
The server glanced at me, then looked back at Chastity.
"Well, there's a bit of everything for lunch. Both tuna and chicken salad and tomatoes, roast beef sandwiches with herbed cream cheese, cucumbers and greens, soup and fresh-baked rolls with homemade butter." "Sounds delicious. Thank you,"
Chastity said to her, and the woman all but lit up with her smile. "Yes, thank you," I added, realizing that I really didn't think twice about the people who worked for me, and how much like me they were. The girl left, and Chastity started uncovering all the dishes.
"How's your day been, Axel?"
I leaned back against the couch and watched her taking in the spread before us with excitement. "Honestly?" I asked.
"Yep. If you're having a shit day, you can tell me. You don't have to answer with the standard good."
I laughed. "Well, yeah, it's been shit. A merger I've been working on for a month is looking like it won't go through, and I put in too many hours on it to lose now."
"Do you want a selection?"
she asked, picking up one of the plates to start dishing out.
"Or do you want to come choose?"
"A bit of everything is fine," I answered, not feeling hungry. I didn't eat well when I was stressed. But she made us up 2 plates, then came and sat down next to me with a sigh.
"This looks so good. Thank you."
She picked up half of one of the roast beef sandwiches and ate it with a moan. My heart kicked out at me again. She was happy. Truly happy just to sit here with me, eating takeout from disposable containers with no one around to see us. Was it expensive takeout? Yes. Was my office $1 million space? Yes. But perhaps that wasn't the reason for her happiness. If that were true, she would be truly unique. "Enough about me. What about you?" I asked her, picking up one of the tuna-filled tomatoes and taking a forkful.
"I'm fine,"
she said.
"Had breakfast with Mom this morning and catching up with some high school friends for dinner."
"Busy girl," I said with a grin. She giggled.
"Yeah, well, even though school isn't very far, I don't really hang out with anyone during the semester. I study hard and socialize when I can, but I generally wait until the holidays to really catch up with everyone."
I nodded, my memory casting me back to my college days. "One long party, right? College? Your weekends must be full." She shrugged.
"Not really."
I stared at her, not seeing any signs that she was lying. Damn. The girl was an enigma. "You and your mother okay?" I asked. "I got the vibe from your messages last night that you two weren't getting along well." She tilted her head to the side and kept munching. And that's when I noticed how corporate she looked. Her hair was all tied up so I could barely see it, and she was covered from head to toe. I frowned at the black pants. Nope. They didn't suit her, or her laid-back personality either.
"We're okay," she said. "We're always okay. She raised me, so I don't think I'll ever let go of the feeling that I owe her for my life. But at the same time, we're very different, so we butt heads on occasion."
"And you butted heads over me?" I could imagine that to a protective mother, a guy my age wouldn't look like the best prospect for her daughter. She shrugged again.
"Yeah, we did. I like you, and she thinks there's no future for us because you're so much older than me."
I opened my mouth to respond, then slammed it shut again. Whoa, that was a bit too intense for me. She laughed at me.
"You look like I just proposed marriage or something. Relax. I just told Mom that we're having fun. I'm only here for a few weeks anyway."
I nodded. That's true. Her statements made me feel better on some level, but they also tugged at my gut.
I only had a couple of weeks with her before she headed off for her last semester before chiropractic school, and possibly started a career in another state. Speaking of our limited time frame, what did we agree to this weekend? Are we catching up Friday night? She looked out the corner of her eye at me and waggled her eyebrows.
Anxious to get into my pants, are you?
I glanced down at the black slacks she wore. Not these ones, I can tell you. Where are your normal clothes, your dresses and skirts? She raised an eyebrow.
What's wrong with my outfit?
It's so boring, conservative, old. Not you. I like how you usually dress. She sighed.
And my hair?
Hated it. It's pretty, I hedged. But can you take it down?
You prefer it like that?
She asked, as though wanting to confirm my reasoning behind my statements. I nodded. Hell yes. Can you take it down? She stared at me for a moment, then nodded. She tilted her head forward, then painstakingly took out a dozen or more hairpins, which loosened the braids that fell. Then she started to unwind them.
I thought you might like me looking a bit older, more mature. I was trying to fit in with your coworkers so you weren't embarrassed by me.
I outright laughed at that one. I don't want you to fit in, sweetheart. You were born to stand out. She poked her tongue out at me for that one.
That is so cliché.
And the fact she didn't fall for cheesy lines like that made me like her even more. Remind me again when you're sleeping over. She ran her fingers through her long blonde tresses, then looked at me.
Better?
I reached over and tangled my fingers in the strands, then cupped her head and dragged her mouth to mine. Much better. We kissed again, and this time I kissed her slowly, exploring her lips and inhaling her scent. When we finally broke apart, my pants were tight once again. So, I asked, still nose to nose with her. Friday night? She nodded.
Okay, after my family thing.
Oh, damn. I'd forgotten about my best mate's party. Okay. I'd leave early if I had to. Patrick only turned 42 once, sure. But being with a girl like this, it was a rare gift. We finished our lunch and then I had to get back to work. She left and I spent the rest of the day on a high, not allowing the people around me to stress me out like they normally would. I had a date to look forward to, and at this moment in time, it felt like the most important date in the world. Friday night.
Chapter 19. Chastity. The next 2 days flew by quickly. I kept myself busy as I normally would, and messaged Axel any chance I got. He was always flirty and thoughtful, and it made me ache to see him again. But his workload was kicking his butt, so I convinced myself that it was better if I simply stayed busy and didn't try to sneak in an extra visit. But from Axel's point of view, I was beginning to think that he was getting frustrated not being able to go all the way, which was expected, really, considering he was a man who'd done it 1,000 times, probably more. It would be like telling a professional football player, yeah, you can play the game you love, but just until halftime. Then you've got to get off the field and go home. But soon, that would all change. He would make love to me, and my world would forever be different. I'd no longer be a virgin. And after waiting so long for the right person, it felt incredible to say that I'd found him. You ready to go? My mom asked as she stuck her head in my room, wearing her robe and slippers. It was finally Friday night, and I had my dad's faux 40th birthday party to attend. Then I'd be heading out afterwards to meet Axel. He'd actually turned 42 years ago, but thanks to a global pandemic that had us all avoiding parties like the plague, he was making up for it tonight. Yeah, I think so, I said, checking myself in the mirror one more time. I was an hour late because the hairdresser I'd gone to this afternoon had been running way behind, and I'd taken way too long to get ready. Your dad's gonna have kittens over that dress, my mother said, giving me a visual once-over, though her smile said she liked the idea of my father being annoyed at me. It's the 2nd anniversary of his 40th birthday, I justified. I have to look nice. And the fact that I'd bought a brand new dress and expensive underwear had nothing to do with the fact that I was meeting up with Axel later. Nothing whatsoever. You sure you don't want me to drive you? Mom asked for the 10th time. Yeah, I'm sure, though I can't wait to get my own car. In a few years when I had the money,
and hopefully would have the time to drive around. I'd buy my own car. Well, have a good night, Mom said, her sadness eating at me. I knew she wanted to come with me, but there was a toxic nature to my parents' divorce that I'd never quite gotten to the bottom of. Neither of them had ever remarried or had more kids, which made me think that perhaps they were destined to get back together. But then again, that was probably just some childish fantasy I held onto and shouldn't. You too, Mom. I love you.
I love you too.
My phone beeped. Uber was here. Gotta go. I grabbed my jacket, covered up all the bare skin I was showing, and raced to my Uber. This dress was mid-thigh, skin-tight, and had spaghetti straps that barely kept it up. It was hot, and it was nothing like the clothes I would normally wear. But tonight was special. Tonight, I wanted to feel beautiful. Dad's place was only 20 minutes away, and while I jiggled nervously in my seat, I messaged Axel but didn't get a response. He said he had to do something tonight. A friend's party or something. I didn't know. And it didn't really matter. We were catching up at a club in the city tonight. Then I'd go home with him. I just had to get through the family stuff first. When we arrived, I paid and jumped out, grateful for the fact that I hadn't driven. The place was packed. It was Friday night and there were cars everywhere. I ran up to Dad's apartment and knocked on the door. A moment later, the door flew open. Auntie Shell! I flew at my dad's sister with my arms opened wide. She laughed in my ear and hugged me back. Oh my God, you are so gorgeous! Let me look at you! We pulled apart and she held my hands, opening my arms wide. You are freaking gorgeous! When did that happen? I laughed, knowing she didn't mean any offense. I think you're being fooled by a nice dress and some makeup, Auntie Shell. She smiled at me with a familiar grin. You haven't lost your down-to-earth sensibility. I'm so glad. She shut the door behind me and took my coat. I'm putting everyone's stuff on your father's bed. When you're ready to leave, you can grab it. Thank you. Do you know where Dad is? She waved her hand in the air. In the middle of the fray. You know what he's like. I grinned. I sure did. My dad was extroverted and single, which meant he had a lot of friends and from all walks of life. There would be people here from his work, his gym, his high school. He collected people, and they stayed around forever. Something I loved about my father. I walked down the short hallway, grinning as the music began to pound through my chest. When I stepped into his large living room, there were people everywhere. Food was laid out in platters on the kitchen counters, and some heads turned to look at me as I stepped forward. One head in particular. Axel? It looked like he was mid-sentence when he stopped talking to a couple of guys and turned to look at me. His gaze raked me from heels to lips and back again. My belly tightened and heat coursed through me. He was seriously the most breathtaking man in the world to me. That smile. Damn, the things I'd do to have him smile like that at me. He said something to the people to whom he was speaking, then walked over to me, a beer in one hand.
What are you doing here?
He asked, leaning forward to kiss me. I knew my dad had to be around here somewhere, so I dodged his lips and quickly kissed him on the cheek. But damn, that was hard. He wore dark-washed denim jeans and a fitted white shirt and looked just fucking hot. There was no other way to put it. He looked lean and powerful, and I suddenly wished he could throw me over his shoulder and take me with him this very minute. Me? I asked, giving him the same look he was giving me. What are you doing here?
Chastity!
My dad yelled out, barreling across the room to grab me up into a hug, the scent of wine and whiskey wafting around him. I laughed as he lifted me up, then put me down. Happy birthday, Dad. Axel's eyes goggled out of his head.
Did you just say, Dad?
I nodded. Yeah, why? Axel glanced away, his jaw tight and angry. What's wrong? Dad put an arm around me.
Hey, sweetie. How do you know this big lug?
Well, shit. I don't, really. We, met briefly the other week when you dumped me at that expensive gym of yours for an hour or so.
I didn't dump you,
my father corrected, rolling his eyes.
But I didn't realize you two had met.
I didn't realize you two knew each other, I added, my throat tight and hot. I swallowed hard to push back the feelings of rising panic. Are you two gym buddies? The expression on Axel's face was devastated. There was no other word for it. He looked ready to commit some sort of felony.
No,
Axel said gruffly.
We've known each other for years. Yeah, Axel's been my best friend for at least a decade. I can't believe you two have never met before. I've seen photos,
Axel said, shaking his head.
But didn't connect the two.
I raised my gaze to his, pain shattering around my heart. Yeah, he probably showed you some school pictures. I don't really look like that now. Axel looked as if he tried to smile, but it came out more of a grimace.
Speaking of how you look, geez, Chastity, you're more beautiful than any of the other women in this room. You know you're not supposed to show everyone else up if you can help it.
He winked at me, and I tried to smile, but I wasn't sure if I succeeded or not. Don't know if that's a compliment or not, Dad, I said, elbowing him in the ribs. But thanks. I, was going to meet up with someone after the party, so got dressed up for a date. My eyes met Axel's, and for a moment I saw the burning lust I'd been hoping for. Then he looked away.
Well, he's one lucky guy, Dad said. Hey, there's some kids here your age on the balcony if you want to go chat with them. You don't need to talk to us old guys all night, you know.
I could almost see the knife Dad had skewered into Axel's heart. Thanks, Dad, but I think I'll go catch up with some of the family. I haven't seen Aunt Shelley in years.
You do that, beautiful. You know how proud we are of you? Did I tell you my girl got into chiropractic school?
My dad bragged to his best mate. Axel. My date. What a fucking mess. Axel shook his head.
Nope, but that's probably not your fault. I don't always listen well.
Dad tisked good-naturedly.
Well, bachelors don't. Anyway, see you later, sweetie.
And my father turned his back on me, dragging Axel away. I stared after him, everything in me aching yet numb at the same time. What did this mean? Would Axel want to continue this 2-week fling we planned? Or had the fact that my dad was Axel's best friend truly fucked up any chances of us being together?
Chapter 20. Axel. Hey, Patrick. Gotta take a leak. I'll be back. Use my ensuite, if you want. I nodded my thanks. Yup, will do. I needed some space and some time to think before my head exploded. What the hell was I going to do now? The bathroom was through Pat's bedroom, so I walked around the bed and headed to the bathroom. I used the toilet, washed my hands, and checked my phone. One text from Chastity.
I'm in an Uber, headed to my dad's birthday. And OMG, I am so excited about tonight. What time do you want me to meet you?
I wanted to slap myself upside the head. How did I not know? Well, how could I have known? Her mother. That's where I know her from. Pat had shown me photos of his ex-wife a few times. They hadn't really stuck in my mind too much, but when I'd seen Chastity's mom, Catherine, Katie, he calls her Katie. Something about her had been familiar, and this was why. I texted Chastity back. You still want to meet up? I headed out of the bedroom, suddenly afraid that she'd come and find me, and then we'd get totally busted. Patrick would have an absolute fucking conniption. At least I hadn't screwed his daughter yet. But damn, had I gotten close. And damn did I want to. Even now. What was with that dress? And her hair? She looked amazing tonight, and had already admitted to her father that she'd dressed up for her date. Our date. Her dad. Fuck. I raced back to the safety of the gym crew, where they were talking about protein shakes and what shares were up at the moment. Boring, normal shit that soothed me a fraction. I ran my hand through my hair. My nerves shot to shit. I needed to break it off. Tell Chastity that there is no way we could meet up tonight, and we certainly couldn't get into bed together again. You okay, Axel? Danny, another guy from the gym, asked me. Yeah, sorry, just had a big week. I managed to have another beer and found a spot in the corner, sitting at the table chatting with some friends who didn't need me to carry the conversation, because I sure as hell couldn't talk like normal. My brain was 90% consumed with the girl who was currently flitting around the apartment as though nothing was wrong. Chastity was talking to everyone, hugging anyone who came towards her, and serving food. The lady of the house. Her gaze occasionally caught mine, but then one of us would look away and the spell would be broken. Is that Pat's daughter? Danny asked suddenly. pouring himself another whiskey. "Which one?" I asked. Danny grinned at me. "The one you haven't stopped staring at all night." I looked properly at Danny this time. I'd never thought about him being that insightful or clever, but from the grin on his face, I wasn't going to be able to bullshit my way out of this one. "Yeah, that's her," I admitted. "She's beautiful," Danny said solemnly. "Yeah," I managed to say, taking another sip of my drink. "Do you know her?" I stared at him for a minute, not sure how to answer. I didn't want anything getting back to Pat, but at the same time, damn, I could use a friend. "Yeah, we met a few weeks ago. I didn't know she was Pat's daughter." "And you two?" I shook my head. "No, we just shared a few meals." I'd gotten as physically close as possible to fucking her as someone could get without actually doing it. But Danny wasn't getting the details. No one was. "So what's the problem?" Danny asked. "The problem..." I moved closer so the people around us wouldn't hear. "The problem is that I was hoping to meet up with her again. But I can't now. And that's fucked." "Why not?" "Why not?" I repeated, incredulously. "Because Pat would fucking kill me if he found out. She's his only kid. And she's... what? Half your age?" I growled at him. "Fuck you." Danny laughed. "Look, buddy, I've known you a long time. If she's special and you think you can make it work long term, go for it. But if you just want another toy in your bed, then yeah, let her go." He shrugged like it was that easy. And yeah, it probably was. My phone vibrated and I picked it up.
"Yeah, I still want to meet. At the club like we planned, or somewhere else?"
I glanced around, but Chastity was nowhere to be seen. "We can still go to the club, but how about you walk down to the cafe on the corner, and I'll pick you up and drive you." It was risky. Someone could see her getting into my car, but I didn't want her to order a ride. We needed to talk. When I looked up from my phone, Danny was staring at me. "You like this girl, huh?" I ran a frazzled hand through my hair. "Yeah, I do." My phone vibrated again.
"I've got my coat. Give me 5 to say goodbye and I'll meet you down the street."
I glanced up and saw her re-enter the room, all smiles as she hugged her dad and said goodbye to his family. She was just as beautiful as the moment I'd met her, all bright vivaciousness, natural charisma. When she headed out the door, I glanced at my phone. "I'd better go. My car is parked at the far end of guest parking." It wasn't. I'd gotten a spot not far away, but I needed to go. Danny held out his hand. "Nice seeing you, man." "Yeah, you too." "Don't tell me you're leaving as well," Pat said, coming up to give me a hug. I hugged him back. "Happy birthday, Patrick. But yeah, got some late conference calls with Taiwan. Gotta head out." I hated lying to him, but the truth was gonna sting a lot worse. "Cool. See you Sunday morning for a run?" "Yes," I told him. It wasn't like I had plans with Chastity anymore. "See you then." Patrick headed off, and I practically ran for the stairs. My heart was pounding now. I was excited. I could feel the edges of my mouth tick up. Shit. No. You're going to break up with her. Don't get all excited to see her. I tried to dampen down my enthusiasm as I ran down the stairs, found my car, and drove to the end of the street. But there she was, waiting for me, her black coat covering her gorgeous dress, and her long blonde hair flowing down her back. She turned at my approach, and for once, her face didn't light up when she saw me. Instead, she simply nodded, walked over, opened the door, and got inside. As soon as her seatbelt was on, I drove off, getting into the lane to hit the freeway and the city. "You still want to go to the club?" I asked her. She nodded. "Yeah, I want to dance. With you. Just once." She sounded so sad, I reached over the space between us and grabbed her hand with mine. "You okay?" She twisted around to glare at me. "No, I'm not. This night was meant to be..." She growled and shook her head. Then she crossed her arms over her chest, effectively dislodging my hand. I put both hands back on the steering wheel, pain in my gut now. She was upset. "Tonight was meant to be what?" I knew, but it felt like she needed to say it. "Tonight..." She took a deep breath. "I thought we... Let's not talk about it.
Let's just go and have a drink and a dance and
what? I asked. Say goodbye forever? She stared out the window.
we have to. There's no other way, is there?
I gripped the steering wheel until my hands ached. We didn't talk for the rest of the drive, and I pulled into the closest valet parking. When I turned the ignition off, she unbuckled her belt and got out of the car without waiting for me to get her door. I took a steadying breath. You can do this. I got out of the car, locked it, and handed the keys over to the valet driver. When I reached for her hand, she came to me, gripping my fingers and pressing into my side as we walked up to the front of the club.
Do you think we could forget about my dad just for an hour? She asked. I just want to enjoy us for a little bit more.
She sounded so depressed, I tugged her into my arms. The world isn't ending, sweetheart. She nodded, then blinked, tears soon cascading down her cheeks. Oh, crap. I kissed her quickly, unsure how to otherwise stop her crying. She cupped my face, then wove her fingers into my hair, holding me tightly against her. I pulled back. If we started fooling around, I was done for. There was no way I'd remember why we couldn't be together if she started touching me. Let's go. I knew the bouncer at the club, so he nodded at me as we approached and opened the door for us.
Oh, fancy,
Chastity said as she went ahead of me. I bit back my retort. I had more money than I knew what to do with, and no one to spend it on or enjoy it with. I could give this girl the world, if she wasn't the only person I couldn't have. And for the first time in my entire life, a saying that my friends had used all the time rang through my head. Sucks to be me.
Chapter 21. Chastity. I wanted to cry. I'd been holding it in all night, pretending to be happy and social, filling the void of the wife figure my dad didn't have. I'd served drinks and food, pandered to my aunts and uncles, and all I wanted to really do was bury myself in Axel's arms and cry my eyes out. But now that I had him all to myself for a very limited time, the last thing I should do was cry. I wanted to dance. The music was great, playing some sort of deep-bass techno with no words. Just a great vibe, dark lighting, and bars aplenty. I stopped walking and Axel slid up behind me, his lips at my ear and his hand around my waist, holding me close.
Do you want a drink?
I nodded and turned my head towards him so that our lips were only a few inches apart. I think I need one.
Me too,
he growled back and pushed his hand into the small of my back.
Let's go to the bar.
I let him lead me through the throng of hot people pressed against each other. The music was so loud I was going to need to holler to be heard, and then I wouldn't be able to speak tomorrow. Or we could just not talk. What more was there to say, really? Axel was my father's best friend. Dad would be horrified to know that I jumped into bed with him. And even if I could get over the link between them, there was Axel. I'd seen the look on his face. It was like he was suddenly disgusted by me, my age, who I was to him now. His best friend's daughter. He'd known all along how old I was, and yet there was nothing like realizing he was literally older than my father to put a damper on things.
What do you want?
Axel shouted next to my ear. Something strong. He leaned over the bar and spoke to the bartender. A minute later, 2 shots of tequila and lime slices were lined up in front of me, and another 2 were lined up in front of Axel. He turned to me, a shot held in the air, waiting for me to join him in drinking away our sorrows. I picked one of mine up and we clinked them together. He threw his back and grabbed the slice of lime to suck on, gasping as the gasoline-like quality of the straight alcohol hit him. I did the same thing, wincing as the burn traveled all the way down my throat to my empty stomach. I'd barely eaten all night. The first shot down, I picked up the second. Axel nodded, and once again, we clanked our little shot glasses together and tipped back the fiery liquid. As I gasped and sucked on the lime wedge, I wondered what we were toasting. The end of our relationship? Getting this far and finding out just in the nick of time that we really shouldn't be together? Thanks, I yelled at him, already feeling the warmth of the liquor moving through my veins.
Let's dance.
He took my hand and led me to the dance floor. Women stared at him as he walked past them, one girl practically falling over herself to come and speak to him. I just gaped at her arrogance, whereas he shrugged her off with a tight, annoyed grimace. Then he pulled me into his arms, and everything in the world was right again, if only for tonight. I put my arms around his neck and moved to the music, smiling and laughing as he grinned down at me. The music changed into something faster, and I was shocked when he moved back and began to move his hips like a pro. I put my arms up in the air and let the music take me. We danced and laughed our way through so many songs I lost count, until the tequila had made my head fuzzy and my heart sing, and my mind was struggling to come up with a reason we shouldn't do this every night. I moved closer to Axel and wrapped my arms around his neck. Then I went up on my toes and lifted my face to be kissed. He didn't hesitate, wrapping me in the tightest hug and kissing me until I was seeing stars. When he lifted his head, I whispered, "Take me home, please." The cloud of lust that had been enveloping us seemed to vanish in a single moment. Axel lifted his head higher, further away from me. Then he gently but firmly pulled my arms from his neck and back down to where they came from.
"We need to talk. Come on."
He grabbed my hand and pulled me through the crowd, towards a door at the back of the club. Where are we going? The enormous bouncer who stood at the door had a lethal expression on his face, but the moment he saw Axel, he stepped aside and opened the door for him. Where are we going now?
Come on.
Axel tugged me through the door and up a flight of stairs. My legs were not steady, and by the time we got to the final step, I almost stumbled. In fact, I would have fallen ass over tits in my very new and expensive dress if Axel hadn't swept me up into his arms.
"You, Missy, are drunk,"
he growled at me, like it was my fault. Yeah, whatever. I wasn't impressed that he wanted to blame all this on me.
"Whatever?"
he repeated, his eyebrows raising in surprise. "Yeah, whatever," I said again, flicking my hand dismissively. "I didn't eat at my dad's, and you know why. And then you gave me shots on an empty stomach." He plonked me down on an empty couch, and that's when I glanced around. Where are we? Some sort of private bar? I couldn't see the club from here, but I could hear the music. There were couches and tables around, but no one else in the space.
"Yeah, it's for VIPs.
I bit the retort that came out my lips at that. Was there anywhere he didn't go? Anyone he didn't know? As though in answer to my thoughts, an older guy reeking of whiskey stumbled by. He straightened when he saw Axel, then tugged on his jacket as though that would help his appearance.
"Axel, haven't seen you around here for a while. What have you been up to, man?"
Axel's lips tightened and he held out his hand to me. I didn't hesitate. I moved straight onto the couch next to him and he put his arm possessively around me.
"Not much,"
Axel said nonchalantly.
"Work. Nothing new."
The guy unbuttoned his jacket and slid onto the couch I'd just been occupying.
"This a new one?"
he asked, nodding at me. Axel stiffened beside me.
"This one is none of your business."
I couldn't read the room well, so kept my mouth shut. Their relationship seemed strange. Strained, as though they'd once been friends, but not anymore. The man, whose name I still didn't know, laughed.
"You mean this one isn't for sharing? Come on, Axel. She looks hot."
He licked his lips and let his gaze roam over me, like he had the right to look at me like that. I shuddered and turned my whole body into Axel. Axel's growl was almost feral as he reached across the small divide and grabbed the other guy by the tie, then hauled him off the couch.
"Get out of here,"
he snarled at the drunk.
"or I'll have you thrown out."
He tossed the guy to the side, then slid back onto the couch with me. The asshole got to his feet and stuck his nose in the air.
"No need to be so fucking pissy. If this one is special, you just needed to— Sam!"
Axel called, and out of nowhere, a huge bald bodyguard appeared. Axel flicked his head in the idiot's direction, and he was escorted from the room by the bouncer. I nestled closer to Axel, my heart hammering in my chest. That guy was creepy. Axel put his arm back around me and grunted.
"He was a good man, once upon a time. We went to college together."
What happened to him? Axel tightened his hold on me.
"Divorce, business failure, normal shit. He's an alcoholic now, and a miserable bastard. I can't believe he got in here."
Why? I looked up. Because this place really is for very important persons only? He crushed his mouth to mine. When he pulled back from the kiss, he sighed.
I would have killed him if he'd touched you.
He pressed his forehead to mine. You mean you didn't want to share me with him? I joked. Axel grabbed me around the waist and hauled me over his body so I was straddling him, my dress up around my ass, exposing my thighs and my underwear to him. Is that a no? I asked, breathless. Axel ran his hands up the outsides of my thighs and stared up at me.
No, I would never share you. With anyone.
His words were clipped, short, as though he were still angry. I slid closer to him, pressing my panties against the crotch of his jeans. Why won't you take me home, Axel? Surely he wasn't planning on having me for the first time up here. It was nice, but privacy was definitely a problem. He groaned and dug his fingers into my thighs.
Because if I take you home, I'll take you to bed. And that's not on the table anymore.
Even though I knew it, hearing it come straight from Axel's lips made my heart sink. I'd been so close to getting what I wanted. I know, I said, slumping. Then I glanced up and met his eyes again. Do you think we could just have one night, tonight, then pretend we've never met? Axel stared at me for a long, intense moment. Then he shook his head. I groaned like an impatient toddler. Why not? He sighed.
Because I couldn't just let you out of my bed after one night, Chastity. I just know it. I'll want you over and over again.
My body throbbed at the mention of all the fun we would be having if it weren't for the fact that my father knew Axel first. This is so not fair, I pouted, running my hands over his broad chest. How well do you know Dad? I mean, is he just a friend you see once a year?
I have a key to his apartment.
Oh, fuck. I thought I was the only one except for my father's cleaning lady who had a key to his apartment. He loves you, I whispered. He nodded.
And he loves you.
Tears gathered in my eyes, hot and horrible. So, essentially, we're fucked. He pressed his lips into a thin line.
I think we'll break his heart and his trust if he finds out we're doing something like this behind his back.
Did we have to sneak around behind his back? Probably. Since this relationship was only destined to survive a few weeks at best, I couldn't exactly come out and say, Hey Dad, we're just fucking each other while I'm on summer break. Don't stress about it.
Is that what you want?
Axel asked, because I'd obviously been silent too long. I shook my head. The tears were now falling down my cheeks. To hide them, I fell into Axel's arms and buried my face in his neck. Chapter 22. Chastity. The next day, I couldn't get out of bed. Just waking up hurt. Hey, sweetie, it's almost noon. You want to go out for lunch? Mom called through my closed door. No thanks, I called back, but I'll get up soon. Then I pulled the comforter, quite literally, back over my head. After we'd decided that it was probably best to quit while we were ahead, Axel drove me back to my mom's place. Neither of us had wanted to say goodbye, so instead we'd just held hands for a few minutes. Then I'd gotten out of the car and run for my life. I didn't look back because my face was covered in tears, and I knew that Axel felt bad enough as it was. We'd made the right decision. But fucking hell, it was a bastard of a choice. Then I'd officially had the worst night's sleep of my life, or at least in my memory anyway. Mom always said I'd been a terrible sleeper as a baby. It had taken me hours to fall asleep. Then I'd been haunted by nightmares that had woken me up multiple times before I'd finally passed out from exhaustion after sunrise. My head kept circling back to one universal truth. It wasn't fair. I'd waited patiently for the right guy to come along, for the man I finally wanted to fall into bed with, and I'd found him. The fact that he was my dad's best friend shouldn't have mattered, should it? But it did. I knew it did. It only highlighted our age gap and how different our lives were. Not to mention the fact that my father would be horrified. And although I was pretty sure that no matter what I did, I wouldn't lose my dad's love or our relationship, I was pretty sure Axel would lose his. I didn't want to do that to either of them. Not for the sake of a relationship that wouldn't last. Of course, part of me wanted to yell that it could last forever if we both wanted it to work. But that was just the teenage version of myself talking. That tiny part of me that still believed in happily ever after, and love at first sight. But I had to face facts. Axel had never said anything about a long-term relationship. If anything, he'd made it clear it wasn't on the table. And I was leaving for school soon, too, so the likelihood of being able to make us last was minimal. I sighed and pushed the comforter back off my hot face. It was lunchtime. I needed to get up and go out, make some plans. I deliberately kept this weekend free for Axel, so that we could spend as much time together as possible if we wanted to. Now I had days and days of nothing to do, except maybe getting ready for Christmas. That thought got me moving, and I quickly jumped in the shower and got dressed. "Hey, Mom, want to go into town and do some Christmas shopping?" "Sure," she called back, sounding happy at the invitation. I tugged on a hoodie, not caring what I looked like today. "Great, let's go."
Chapter 23. Axel. Sunday morning. I pulled on my joggers when I heard a knock at the door. Coming. When I got there, I pulled the door open, a part of me secretly hoping it was Chastity. Damn, I missed her. "Oh, hey, Patrick." "What's wrong with you?" Pat asked, handing me a blue Gatorade. "Hungover?" He pushed past me into my apartment, and I groaned. Thank God Chastity isn't here. "We were supposed to go jogging. Sorry, man." Patrick and I went running most weekends. He was a great training partner, fit and determined. "All good," he said, cracking open his drink and taking a swig. "I ran here, so I figured you might want to join me for a bit." I definitely did. Something had to get me out of this funk. "Give me 2 minutes." I walked to my bedroom and pulled on some socks and shoes, then went in search of a tank that wouldn't irritate me while I ran. "Hey," Pat called from the doorway. "You okay?" "Yeah, why?" He shrugged. "Don't know. You were a bit odd on Friday night, and now? I don't know. Just wanted to ask. Check in on you, because I know not many dare to ask." He grinned at me to show he was joking. I sighed and ran my hand through my hair. "Yeah, How much could I tell my best friend? I started dating this girl a week or so ago." "Oh yeah? She's screwing with your head already?" Patrick laughed. My gut tightened. "Yeah, she is. But I don't know. I like her. I just don't know if I can do anything about it." "Hang on a second," Pat said, putting his hand up. "You actually like this girl? Since when do you get attached?" I got to my feet and pulled on a thin cotton white tank. "She's different." Patrick laughed at me again. "And by that, do you mean she's a brunette rather than the normal blonde?" I groaned and scrubbed my hands over my face. "You really think I'm a shallow asshole, don't you?" Which boded even worse for me if Chastity and I decided to date. Pat would never want me, with my history, anywhere near his daughter. Patrick sobered instantly. "Hey, man, I didn't mean to offend you. It's just, hey, if you actually like her, I'm happy for you. I just never thought you'd find someone worth settling down for." I grinned at him. "I didn't say that. Settling down was another chapter entirely." Then I shrugged and stood up. "I just like her." "Then go for it," Patrick said, walking forward and clapping me on the back. "Any woman who has you distracted, forgetting your schedule, and tied up in knots must be worth chasing after. I've known you for 10 years and never seen you like this." I nodded my head, my heart sinking. "Yeah, maybe. You're definitely right about that run, though. I could really use a heavy training session." "Let's go, then." Patrick put his Gatorade down on the table and dumped his keys and cell phone. "Can I leave all my shit here?" "Yeah, of course. We'll just take a key." I left my cell phone in my room, just in case Chastity called or texted. She hadn't since Friday night. But it would just be our luck that the one time she did, her father would see it. Once I'd stashed any potential evidence of Chastity away, we headed out. We took the elevator down, then started stretching and began our run. We jogged through the city and made it all the way to the beach. By the time we got there, I developed a good sweat and my heart was pounding. "Oh yeah, that feels better," I said, bending forward with my hands on my hips and breathing deeply. "So where'd you go Friday night?" Patrick asked in between panting breaths. "You said you had a conference call, but I know you. Did you catch up with the chick you're hung up about?" I nodded. "Yeah, went to Chase's. but we pretty much ended it before it began. She's too different. Young. Patrick chuckled. Half your luck, bro. Let's go. We turned and headed back, running around each other and sprinting along each street. When we finally got back to my apartment, my legs were shaking. Fuck, that was good. Patrick nodded, red-faced and completely out of breath. I went straight for the fridge, where I pulled out a couple of bottles of water and tossed one at him. You got plans for Christmas next week? Patrick nodded, drinking the water and lifting his tank to wipe away the sweat on his red face. Yeah, meeting my parents for lunch and having my daughter over for dinner. My stomach lurched, and I turned away to get something to eat. You want some eggs or something? Nah, I've got to get back, actually. Gotta date myself, for lunch. I turned and stared hard at him. A Sunday afternoon date? Who are you, and what have you done with my friend? Pat had been pretty burned by Chastity's mom, and I'd never known him to date anyone seriously. He laughed at me. Pot, kettle. Touché. Maybe we're just getting too old, he joked. That is very possible. I'm kind of sick of waking up alone. He walked over and held out his hand. Thanks for the run, Axel. You should get strung up over a woman more often. I haven't had that good a run in ages. I slapped him on the shoulder. You enjoy your lunch date. I hope she ties you up in knots. Patrick huffed and headed out, whistling softly. Wow, he actually sounds pretty happy. I shook my head, scrambled up half a dozen eggs, then dug into them. Damn, I was hungry. Then it was shower time. I was sweating from the back of my neck to the soles of my feet. I scrubbed myself hard and let my mind wander to work. The Taiwan merger. Employees to hire and fire. A new building I wanted to buy. Anything and everything. I let my mind whirl. But by the time I was dressed again and about to turn on my laptop, my brain was back on Chastity. I reached for my phone. We hadn't made any rules about our supposedly ended relationship, so a text wasn't off the table. Hey, what are you up to for Christmas? I put the phone down and tried to get back to work, but the device immediately buzzed with her reply. I groaned and closed my laptop, giving up. I walked back into my bedroom, lay down on the bed, and opened the phone. Hey, Mom's for lunch, Dad's for dinner. Small, casual. What are you up to? I smiled as I texted. Not much. My parents are in Europe. A moment later, she responded. You're an only child, too? I sighed and rolled onto my side. We really hadn't got into a lot of personal stuff. I felt like I knew her well, but we'd missed so many of the pedantic details that made up the person. Yup. I closed my eyes as I laid my head on the pillow. I hadn't been sleeping great since I broke up with Chastity, which wasn't unusual for me. I rarely got more than 4 hours sleep most nights anyway. It was the only way I'd managed to get my company off the ground. I did 2 8-hour shifts every day, sometimes more. But thanks to the few nights Chastity had spent in my bed, my body was aching for that feeling of a full 6 to 8 hours of sleep. It had been heaven. I put my phone down next to me, forcing myself to relax. My thumbs had been poised for the next message, anxious for her. I wanted to see her, but I'd been the one to put a stop to everything. My phone dinged. I miss you. This is shit. I chuckled and rolled onto my back. That was the perfect message to receive. I miss you too, and I agree. I hit send before I could stop myself. I could safely say I'd never felt this way before, about anyone. Perhaps it was the fact that she was untouchable? I didn't really know. But she hadn't been untouchable a few days ago, and I'd still wanted her more than I've ever wanted any woman before. I've only got about 10 days left until I go back to school full-time. Are you sure you don't want to catch up? When that message came through, every part of me sang out with happiness. She knew that this relationship wasn't going to last, and yet she wanted it anyway. I inhaled sharply and took my time as I messaged her back. After writing the response, then rewriting it twice, I was satisfied. I'd love to catch up with you. Are you sure you'll be okay to just walk away after our 2 weeks are done? When I sent it, my gut tightened. I didn't want her to say no,
and worrying about losing her was something I thought I'd never feel. It was a really foreign sensation. My phone vibrated straight away. I'd rather spend 2 weeks with you than a lifetime without you.
Fuck, I groaned out loud. This girl is going to be the death of me. I typed back quickly, before I could change my mind. My place, tonight, 8 o'clock. I sat up on the edge of my bed as I waited for her response. When it came, I practically whooped.
See you then. XOX. Chapter 24. Chastity. I didn't even bother with underwear this time. I wore a maxi cotton dress that was tight around my boobs, so I didn't need a bra. It was also long enough that no one would ever know I was commando, even though it felt ridiculously naughty to be running through the city with the fresh air blowing between my legs. I reached Axel's apartment that he owned, shaking my head. Who owned a whole building? I went straight up the elevator and stepped into his apartment.
Hello, beautiful.
Axel greeted me, standing in the foyer wearing a basic white t-shirt and a ripped pair of jeans. The soft fabric of his shirt clung enticingly to his muscled chest and biceps. His hair was styled, and his easy smile made him look like he should have been gracing the front of a billboard somewhere. I dropped my purse and ran straight at him. He swept me up against his hard body, so I wrapped my arms around his neck and hugged him tight. God, it felt good to be with him again. When he drew back, I didn't let him speak. I just grabbed his face and kissed him deeply, wanting him to make me feel good again. My chest had felt like it had been clamped in a vice for the past 48 hours, and now that I was with him, I could finally breathe again. He kissed me hard, forcing my lips apart even as his hands roamed my body greedily. He grabbed my ass and squeezed. Then he stopped kissing me and pulled back.
Are you wearing underwear?
No. I wore my new expensive stuff Friday night, and everything went to hell, so I shrugged. His smile was too sexy for the health of my fragile heart. He pulled further back, took my hand, and led me to the bedroom.
So what? You figured that if you were naked underneath your dress, I could just take you against a wall or something?
I shrugged. A girl can only hope. And I definitely dreamt of that exact scenario. He sighed as he drew me closer and cupped my face with both hands. Gently, carefully.
Not this time, sweetheart.
I put my hands around his waist. But maybe another time? I asked, hopeful. I had so many fantasies I wanted to fulfill in the short time we had together. He chuckled.
What's going on in that amazing brain of yours?
I smiled. You don't want to know.
I doubt that.
He smiled.
But for now, I'll let you keep your secrets. I have a feeling they'll destroy what I have planned for tonight otherwise.
What do you have planned? I leaned forward to kiss him softly again. I loved his lips. They were just so soft, full, and lush. I could kiss him all day and never get tired of his taste, his smell.
The perfect night,
he whispered against my mouth.
Where you come on me over and over and over again.
I inhaled deeply. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted that too. Okay. He reached down and grabbed my dress, scrunching it up so that the material slid up my legs, over my knees, and up my thighs. I leaned back and held up my arms. I smiled at him, confident and content to let him undress me. He wanted me. I knew that. From what he'd said, he wanted to get me naked from the first moment we'd met. He lifted the dress to my waist, then gave it a couple more tugs to get it over my breasts, my shoulders. Then finally, I was as naked as the day I was born. Axel was staring at me with ferociously hungry eyes.
Chapter 25. Axel. I didn't want to move. Everything about that session had been perfect. Her body's reactions to me, her moans of pleasure, even the way she touched me, kissed me, and the way she tasted. It was officially my sweetest memory of her. But as the seconds ticked on and Chastity was no longer panting, the room became still and quiet. Then I realized that, despite my comfort and the fact that I didn't want to move, I was probably squashing her. I should get up. I groaned, pushing up on my hands, my body complaining about the movement in every cell. She grabbed for me, tightening her legs around my waist and grabbing onto my arms.
No, stay. You're not heavy.
I doubted that very much.
but I didn't want to leave either. So I shifted a little and took some of my weight on my arm, then grabbed her hip and rolled to the side and dragged her with me.
Are you okay?
She nodded, bliss etched into every crevice on her face. Oh yeah. How about you?
Yeah,
I shifted and my dick slipped out of her.
Damn. I better clean up.
I reached for the lip of the condom that I always wore. Always.
What the?
I lifted her thigh to search for it.
Oh my God.
What's wrong? Chastity asked, sitting up, then wincing. Wow, that's kind of sore now. Guilt hit me from every angle. I'd hurt her. I'd deflowered her. I'd had unprotected with a virgin.
Please tell me you're on the pill. Women did that, right?
No, I don't need to. Why? She glanced down at the same spot I'd been staring at. Did you? I nodded and sat up, wanting to punch my own lights out.
I'm so sorry. I didn't even think. You were...
I was what? Chastity asked, her eyes wide and hurt. I turned back and pulled her close.
No, you were perfect. So perfect. I just let myself get carried away because you were so beautiful.
I kissed her forehead, then the tip of her nose.
Damn, you're beautiful. I could just lose myself in you all day.
She stared up at me with eyes that were still filled with tears. I'm so sorry. She wiped her cheeks. Should I be worried about anything? I shook my head.
Not from me. I get a full workup from the doctor every 6 months. Last blood test was a few weeks ago. Plus, I'm always careful.
She smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek, making her look young and so vulnerable. She made my heart ache. Not always.
I squeezed her tightly, hauling her closer. You are a first for me on so many levels, sweetheart. You're just... I ran out of words. Perfect.
She sighed and laid her head on my chest. I rocked her, because it felt right to hold her like this. I glanced over at the clock on my dresser when I heard her softly yawn.
Hey, how about we have a quick shower, then come back here to sleep?
She slid off my lap, then giggled as she swayed on her feet. I can barely stand up properly. My legs are all wobbly. I stood up behind her and slid a hand around her waist.
I'm sorry if I hurt you. I really didn't want to.
She smiled as we staggered into the bathroom. You didn't hurt me. I'm just achy. I'm sure you know what that's like.
I chuckled. Hardly. I can't say that my deflowering was very painful. She rolled her eyes.
I don't want to know about that. What I meant was, I just used muscles I've literally never used before. You know, like when you train at the gym after a long break or something. I'm just achy.
Okay then. I agreed with her. She sounded drunk on her happiness. Come and let's clean up. I turned on the shower, letting the water heat up for a few moments, and tugged her beneath the hot spray. I didn't know how to deal with all the different emotions coming at me. It was all too intense. How did people get any work done when they were in love like this? I shook my head to get rid of the ridiculous thought. Shut up. What is wrong with you? I picked up the bar of soap and started washing her arms and pulled her close, so her back was against my chest. As long as you're all right. I moved the soapy washcloth down between her legs, gently wiping away the remains of our first encounter.
I'm more than all right.
She sighed.
I'm great.
Waves of happiness flowed over me, and I began to feel like I might drown. I reached for the faucet handle to turn the water off. Okay, let's get to bed.
No, my turn.
She reached for the soap and began washing my chest.
You're so gorgeous, I seriously can't believe it sometimes.
I took the soap from her and rinsed off. Let's go, beautiful. Ushering her from the shower, I grabbed a couple of towels and dried us both quickly. Let's get to bed. I put my arm around her and led her to my bed once again. Jump in. She crawled onto the mattress and lay down on her side, her profile as astounding as every other part of her. From the angle of her knee to the curve of her hip, she was just magnificent. I crawled onto the mattress and tugged the blankets up over us, then laid my head on my pillow, facing her.
You okay?
She asked. I nodded. Yeah, of course. Are you okay? She smiled softly.
I had the most amazing night ever. Of course I'm all right. But you look worried. Are you regretting what happened?
I grinned and grabbed for her. Come here, you. I tugged her and flipped her over so that her spine was against my chest and her ass was pressed into my belly. When she looked at me, it was like she was staring straight through me.
Are you sure you're okay, Axel? You can tell me.
I sighed and pressed a kiss to her shoulder. Even facing away, she was too in tune with me. I am a little worried. I've never risked being unprotected like that. If she got pregnant, what the hell would we do? Pat would kill me, and her college dreams would be done.
It's okay. My period's due next week, so the timing isn't right, I don't think. But I'll let you know, okay?
Okay. What else could I say? It was my fault we were in this mess. It wasn't like the virgin should be the one to worry about contraception.
Thank you for the most incredible night, Axel. I wouldn't change a thing, seriously. It was perfect.
I squeezed her tightly against me. Let's get some sleep. I've been looking forward to this for a week. She giggled softly.
Which part? Just sleeping with me?
I closed my eyes. Yeah, you're a good teddy bear. It was so much more than that. But there was no way I was owning up to everything I was feeling at the moment. I felt too unguarded, too raw. Like someone had torn away all the armor I had carefully constructed around myself over the decades. Laying here with her sated body curled up in my arms, I was totally at peace. My brain wasn't whirling. I wasn't fighting. I was just me, happy. And it was the most foreign feeling in the world. Go to sleep, my perfect girl. I've got to get up early in the morning, but I'll wake you before I leave.
She nestled closer and was soon asleep.
I smiled and pulled the blanket a little higher over her shoulder, then slipped into dreamland alongside her. When I woke to my cell phone buzzing out my alarm, I groaned. I didn't want to get up. Today was going to be a bitch. Chastity still slept in front of me, and I still had my arm wrapped around her. We'd barely moved all night. I lifted my head and stared at the clock. 6 a.m., and I didn't remember waking once. Damn it, this girl is better for sleep than Valium. I tried to remove my arm without waking her, but as soon as I tried to move away, she rolled onto her back, smiled up at me and blinked sleepily.
Good morning.
Good morning, I whispered back, dropping a quick kiss on her soft lips. You stay asleep. I'll call you later. She reached up and cupped my cheek softly.
Okay.
I dropped another kiss on her lips because the first one wasn't enough, then got out of the bed quickly before I was tempted to blow off my morning and stay in bed with her. And would you have remembered protection this time? Damn it. What's wrong with you? If we were going to stay together long term, I would have asked her to go on the pill for us. Everything with her was so damn natural and easy. If we'd met a few 100 years ago, I'm sure I would have moved her in and had a dozen babies. There's no way I would have kept my hands to myself. I grabbed my razor and quickly shaved. If I really felt that way about this girl, that in another time I would have happily pumped her full of babies, then what the hell was I doing letting her go in less than 2 weeks? I shook my head, cleaned up, and headed into my walk-in closet. I picked out a custom navy pinstriped suit, a gray tie, and my crispest white shirt. It wasn't 1950. And we weren't Vikings or cavemen. I worked hard. She went to school. We were products of our society and our time, and I needed to be grateful for the moments I had with Chastity. I glanced in the mirror to make sure I hadn't missed anything. Then I headed through my bedroom and out the door. I didn't look back, though a part of me ached to do so. I had 1,000 things to do today, and I needed to get my mind focused and off the young woman I'd left in my bed.
Chapter 26. Chastity. I stared into the glass of white wine and ran my finger around the rim, softly singing to myself.
Chastity, are you okay?
I glanced up. Yeah, of course, Mom. Why? She shrugged and poured herself another glass of wine.
You just seem distracted, that's all. Everything go well with Axel last night?
I nodded, heat pumping into my cheeks, making my face burn. Yeah, great.
Are you seeing him again?
I stared at my mom, noting the pinched look around her mouth. Yeah, I will. But don't worry, Mom. I know that there's no future for us. I'm just trying to enjoy it while it lasts. I brushed my hand past the wine glass I'd barely touched and reached for my cell phone. I'd been trying not to text Axel all day. After all, he hadn't reached out, but I looked at it so many times it was embarrassing to admit the number. I just don't want you to get hurt, Chastity. You've always been so smart, avoiding boys like the plague. But this one? I laughed. Hardly a boy, Mom. Exactly. He's a man who knows what he wants, or should. I could feel my mother was ramping up for another one of her lectures, so I stood up, cell phone in hand. I think I'm going to go to bed, Mom. See you in the morning? She nodded. I've got to go into the office to pick something up, but then I'll be home in the afternoon. Perfect. I smiled. I want to start baking Christmas cookies and some gingerbread. I kissed her on the cheek and headed to my bedroom. I needed a little space to think and just be. My mom made it impossible to just be quiet. She always needed to fill the space with music, television, or talk, even if it was idle chatter. And while I appreciated that most of the time, today I just needed some space. I'd woken up around 11 a.m., having slept so well I could barely open my eyes from the sheer exhaustion of it all. But Axel was gone, and had been for hours. The expensive penthouse apartment was enormous, cold, and empty without him. So I'd thrown on my clothes, called an Uber, and raced out of there. I didn't really like the idea of hanging around his space while he wasn't there. It would be just my luck that he'd have some maid or personal chef or someone show up. And there I'd be, still wearing the dress I'd come over in last night. The walk of shame, billionaire style, if there was such a thing. I'd gone home and spent the day with my mom, but now it was bedtime. I hadn't heard from him, and I missed him. I stripped out of my clothes, pulled back the blankets, and climbed into bed in my panties and a tank top. It was still early to go to bed, near 10, but I settled into my tiny mattress and sighed with happiness. Last night had been amazing, better than any first-time love story I'd ever heard. And it was all because Axel had been the most patient, perfect, talented lover, and I wanted more. Hey, how was your day? I miss you. I hit send, even though I wasn't sure if I should tell him how much I missed him. Would he like that? Hate it? Didn't matter now. It was gone into the ether. Hey, stranger. I'm still at the office pulling an all-nighter. How was your day? I frowned. Seriously? I thought only slacker college students pulled all-nighters before final exams. He wrote back. LOL, hardly. I wriggled my fingers and tapped my foot against the bed. Should I ask to see him again? Would he want to see me soon? Or more like the weekend? I had no idea of his schedule, but if I had my way, I'd be in his bed again tomorrow. A cheeky thought popped into my head, and I smiled to myself and picked up my phone. When you finally crash, do you want a teddy bear to sleep with? I sent it, then instantly regretted it. What if he said no? I jumped up and threw my phone on the bed when he didn't instantly respond. Shit. Moving to the bathroom, I brushed my teeth, washed my face, and generally freaked out. I knew I wasn't one of those girls to overthink and overstress about guys, but Axel was special. I didn't want to muck anything up before it had even begun. We'd agreed to spend time together over the next 2 weeks, and I wanted all those days. When my nerves got the better of me and my stomach twisted into knots, I raced back to my bedroom to find I'd missed a call from him. Shit. I paced my small bedroom while I rang him back. My heart was pounding, and when he finally answered, my stomach lurched. Hey, beautiful. The relief at hearing him talk to me in that tone was instant, and I staggered to my bed before collapsing onto the mattress. I'm so sorry I missed your call. I was just in the bathroom. It's all good. I just thought it might be easier to chat for a minute. I need to get back to work soon. Oh, well, wasn't that romantic? But I wanted to hear your voice once more. It'll bolster me for the hours ahead. That's more like it. Well, I was wondering if we could schedule our next date, I said in a rush. We've only got 2 weeks before I head back, and I want to see you as many times as I can, if that's okay. Damn, I was a mess. He chuckled softly on the line. How about tomorrow?
I can't guarantee I'll be any use to you after the night's work I've got planned, but I'd love to see you.
I bit my lip to stop the squeal that rose from escaping. I love that. What time?
How about 8? My place again?
I'll be there.
Great. I've got to go, but I'll see you tomorrow.
The best words I'd ever heard. Great. See you then. I hung up and let the squeal out. I was seeing him again. Tomorrow. Your dad's best friend. Oh, shut up. I told myself Dad would never find out about our clandestine 2 weeks, surely. I would never tell him, and Axel certainly wouldn't either. So as long as neither of us went insane and said anything, he would always be none the wiser. I put a hand to my still tender belly and smiled. Tomorrow would be amazing. More kisses, more intense, tender, ridiculously dreamlike moments with Axel. The day dragged on so slowly, I was going insane by the time 7 p.m. rolled around. Are you sure you've had enough to eat? Mom asked, offering me the chicken pad thai for the 10th time. Yeah, I'm fine. I've got to go pack, then I'll be off.
You're going to Axel's again?
I nodded, ignoring the unhappy look on my mom's face and her narrowed eyes. Yep, won't be long. I raced to my bedroom, packed a set of clothes for tomorrow, and squirted some perfume on my neck. I'd been fantasizing all day about all the things I wanted to do to Axel. I shivered at the thought as I stuffed some clothes and a toothbrush into my bag. Mom opened the door as I was pulling out my cell phone. I'll drive you. No, it's okay, I said, waving my phone. I was just about to. No, she interrupted, crossing her arms over her chest. I want to see where you're heading off to every night. From the look on her face and the set of her jaw, this wasn't an argument I was going to win. Okay, Mom, that'd be great. Hopefully she wouldn't insist on seeing his actual apartment, though if she did, would she change her mind about him? Money and success generally impressed her, though it hadn't so far with Axel. But maybe she didn't realize just how rich he actually was. You ready to go right away? I asked, glancing at my watch. I said I'd be there at 8. Mom nodded and stepped out of my doorway. Yep, let's go. We locked up and jumped into her old car. You'll need to direct me. I don't know which way I'm going. Just head to the city and I'll show you, I said, pointing down the street. It's about 20 minutes or so. Mom nodded and we took off. The silence was deafening, so I reached for the radio and flicked on the knob. Where does he live? She asked suddenly. An apartment? Yeah, the penthouse, in a building in the city, I answered, feeling strangely unnerved by my mother's behavior. She seemed angry, though I couldn't work out why she would be. The penthouse, she repeated. Impressive, I suppose. I laughed, then coughed to clear my throat. No, what's impressive is the fact he built and owns the whole building. Silence descended again, so this time I just looked out the window and watched the city fly by. As we got closer, I started directing her along the streets, until finally she pulled up outside the impressive building. Thanks, Mom. Did you want to walk me up, or... She shook her head emphatically, effectively interrupting me, and I turned away to open the door. Her hand snaked out and she grabbed my arm. Please be careful, Chastity. I turned back. What do you mean, Mom? What's wrong? She stopped and swallowed. You know I've never regretted keeping you. I know. But you have an opportunity here that I never had. You're smart. You're amazing. You're heading to graduation and chiropractic school, and I don't want you throwing any of that away on some guy. I don't care how rich he is. I smiled and squeezed her hand. I won't, Mom. Axel is just fun. He makes me feel special. I know. That's what I'm afraid of, she said, then withdrew her hand. He isn't the marrying kind, sweetheart. So just guard your heart as best you can, okay? You're not the type of girl who has fun and just walks away. I rolled my eyes and got out of the car. Thanks for the lift, Mom. I'll see you tomorrow. I stepped back and waved at her as she pulled into traffic and drove home. I wrapped my arms around myself and thought about what she'd said. In the past, I hadn't been one to date guys casually, and I didn't really think I was now either. But I wanted some fun, And I deserved it after all the time and effort I'd put into being good during my teenage years. It was time to be bad.
Chapter 27. Axel. My head throbbed with a migraine, and I was beginning to see stars. The aura had been chasing me all day. Then the light sensitivity had hit, and I had my driver take me home, and I'd climbed into bed. When the doorbell pealed, I groaned, loudly. Oh shit. I didn't keep a permanent housekeeper like most of my wealthy friends, but at times like this, I wished I did. I rolled out of bed, only opening my eyes enough to see where I was going, and felt my way along the walls to the front door. When I opened it and saw my gorgeous little Chastity there, even in my pained state, a sense of happiness washed over me. Her face was lit up with a huge smile that quickly crashed into a frowning look of worry.
What's wrong? Are you okay?
I waved her inside, then shut the door after her, sagging against the wall for a moment to stop from falling over. Migraine.
Then you should be in bed, she said, dropping her bag on the ground, then putting her body next to mine and my arm over her shoulder. Come on, I'll help you.
I didn't fight her as she walked me back to my room, supporting my wobbly frame. When I got close to my bed, I pulled my arm off her shoulders, staggered over to the mattress, and climbed beneath the covers again. The room was dark and cool, and I sighed as my head hit the pillow once more. I'm sorry to screw up our night, I managed to say, though I could barely open my eyes. She laughed softly.
You're just trying to get out of taking me to bed again, aren't you?
I chuckled as well. I wish that was the reason. I stifled the groan that rose as a fresh wave of nausea rolled through me.
What do you need?
She asked quietly.
Water? Painkillers?
Just sleep, I told her. I'd already taken everything I had. This was most likely stress-induced. I'd had a bitch of a day. The mattress dipped as Chastity crawled onto the bed, lay down beside me, and pulled the covers up over us. I forced my eyes open to stare at her. Are you tired too? She smiled as she laid her head on the pillow and reached out to run her fingers through my hair. I moaned at the touch. God, that feels good. She pressed harder, massaging my temples in a rhythmic circular motion.
If you roll onto your back and turn this way a little, I can do both sides at the same time.
Okay. That sounded like heaven, though I'd never thought that was a place I'd end up. I rolled onto my back and moved so that I was lying at more of a horizontal angle. Chastity sat up, shuffled into place at the headboard, and gently put my head in her lap. I'm sorry, I said again, at a total loss for words with so much pain winging through my usually healthy body. I don't usually get migraines this bad, but...
But what?
She whispered.
Are you okay?
I nodded while she rubbed her fingers over my temples, then began to slowly trace patterns over my skull and through my hair. Yeah, I'm okay. Just work shit. That feels really nice. The pain was actually easing a little. Not enough to stand up or try to function, but I might be able to fall asleep if the pressure decreased a little.
My chiropractor does a lot of cranial work on me, and I know it might help a little.
I sighed again as she worked through my skull, all the way around the back where my neck ached with tension. Pity you're not trained yet, I joked. I'd hire you full-time to look after me and my staff.
How many people work for you?
She asked. In my building? I don't know. 200, maybe. She laughed softly.
200 people. Check them twice a month, 100 people a week. Yeah, that sounds like a good plan.
I smiled and relaxed deeper into her touch. I'd said it as a joke, but I knew of CEOs that hired massage therapists to attend their staff. Why not a full-time chiropractor? Let's set it up, I said. You call me when you graduate, and we'll get you an office. She was silent for a long time until I opened my eyes and looked up at her. You okay? She nodded.
Yeah, that sounds nice. Close your eyes. Try to sleep.
She sounded sad, and I got it. We'd set the terms of this deal already. 2 weeks of fun, then we were done. Now I was inviting her to come work for me. That hadn't been part of the plan. I didn't mean to.
It's okay,
she interrupted quietly.
I'm enjoying the time we're having now and not thinking about the future.
I smiled and closed my eyes. You can't be enjoying this.
I am, she jumped in to say. I don't mean the part about you being in pain. That's shit. And I must admit that I'd planned to already be naked with you like this. But my plans included me massaging other parts of your body.
I groaned. Oh God, don't torture me. I wish I could. God, I wish I could. But my body didn't even stir at the suggestion, which, considering how much I desired the woman in my bed, definitely said something about my current state. All of my blood was pumping into my migraine, and my body was not responding to anything other than the pain. She giggled.
I'm sorry, I said that all around the wrong way. What I meant was, I'm kind of enjoying looking after you. I didn't think you'd let me.
I couldn't help the sigh that fell from my lips. Yeah, well...
I mean, you don't have full-time staff members cooking and cleaning for you. I doubt you let a lot of people cater to you. You just don't seem like that sort of guy.
I sighed again and didn't open my eyes. I felt vulnerable enough as it was. How come you seem to know me so well? I'd never let anyone see me like this before. Not since I was 16 and living with my parents. Though even then, it was the housekeeper that brought me a barf bucket, not my mother. It took a lot for me to trust anyone, let alone a woman I was sleeping with. That didn't happen often, and to let them see me in this sort of state, useless, helpless, and vulnerable, she was right. It had never happened. Come lie down with me, I said, tugging at her arms. I want to feel that naked body of yours against me.
Okay, give me a minute. Just gotta run to the bathroom.
She crawled off the bed and disappeared, so I took my time shuffling around and lying my head back on the pillow. The pain had eased, and the nausea was only softly clawing at my stomach. I might be able to sleep for a few hours, then I'd feel better. I was sure of it. The door closed and Chastity crawled back into the bed with me. You better be naked, I softly growled at her. She giggled and shuffled closer, shoving her naked, fleshy, warm ass against my belly. Oh yeah, I said, wrapping my arm around her middle.
You're not naked, though,
she whispered. I pulled her even closer, then kissed her hair. I couldn't stand up long enough to undress properly. Don't worry. As soon as I can get naked, I will. She didn't say anything else. She just settled into my arms and was still, and quiet. Sleep beckoned, and yet I fought it, not wanting to lose touch of this moment. We'd had so many perfect, beautiful times together, and this one, amazingly, was going to be tattooed across my mind for many years to come. The poor girl had come here looking for fun, passion, and orgasms, and here I was, still dressed, cuddling her in bed, totally unable to fulfill any of the fantasies she'd hoped for. Thank you for this, I whispered at her before I lost my mind and succumbed to sleep. I'll make it up to you, I promise. I didn't hear what she said next, if she did respond. Sleep claimed my drug-addled, pained body, and into dream world I fell.